I'm kind of tickled because that song, that hymn, is typically used at ordinations, and with any luck, next December we're going to get to sing it for my ordination, and I'm really excited about that. Thank you. So some of y'all were probably here a couple months ago when I gave a service about all of the work that goes into becoming a Unitarian Universalist minister. I had this handy little thingy with me then. We did a game about all the steps it takes. So since May, when I spoke with y'all, I have a couple little updates, which is that pending approval, I will be starting an internship, probably in January at this point. And I have secured a fully funded spot in a remote CPE unit, which I will start in October, which is a huge deal. This was a giant barrier on my journey. And a colleague has decided that they are going to make sure that it happens for a lot of seminarians who are in my position. So very, very thankful for them. And I'm noticing we've got a lot of visitors today, and I just want to say welcome. You are in an awesome place. You are in an awesome place where, oh gosh, Morgan and I were talking before the service. Morgan and I have been friends for 17 years, since our freshman year in high school. I came here my senior year of high school, so like 2011, so like 13 years, is that right? So about 13 years ago, I came to Westside, not because I was looking for a church community to join, because I wanted people to stop asking me where I went to church and trying to get me to go to theirs. I got more than I bargained for, obviously. I came out as a part of this congregation. Actually, in that office right over there, that belongs to the minister, is where I came out for the first time. And the nursery is where I considered being a minister for the first time. And this community has truly loved me into being, and I am so thankful. So our service today is called Screaming at God and Screaming into the Void. And it is based around this poem that I wrote a couple of years ago called Screaming at God, or The Nice Thing About a Blanket Fort. And this one is in my book, Something Resembling God. The nice thing about a blanket fort, or a depression pit, as my friend half-jokingly calls it, hoping to remind me not to get too comfortable, that I can't stay too long. But the nice thing is, if you tuck yourself in just right, and your toes are all covered, and you're properly warm and cozy, and finally starting to calm down. If you settle into that moment, you can feel God in the quiet space around you. And you can trap him in between your heartbeats and wring his neck in your shaking hands, demand to know who the heck hurt him. So you can go back to before the Big Bang, to when God was just a whisper suckling at the breast of the universe, and fix whatever heinous thing destroyed the heart of the Lord, made him cruel enough to invent pain. And the best thing about a blanket fort is when you're finished screaming at God, the goddess will stroke your hair. There, she sings a lullaby of daydreams. Give it all to God. It is not yours to carry. Where did my kid go? He can have the iPad back now. forgot to print it out. All right, so some of y'all might remember this story from the pandemic. There was a group of women who had spent weeks, maybe months at that point. Oh, actually, let me pause. If I start talking too fast, I want y'all to wave at me. I do that, it doesn't offend me. Please, if I'm talking too fast, I can see that. Is this better with me closer? Yeah. Fantastic. All right, accessibility is really important to me. So if it's not accessible for any reason, I would rather stop than find out after the service that you couldn't hear it, right? All right, so a bunch of folks gathered in this parking lot and they came together to let it all out. They literally just stood in a circle and screamed, all facing different directions, because you know this is right when COVID started. And they just screamed into the void until they were ready to stop. That's it. That's the whole story. Now, the screaming didn't fix anything. At the end of the scream, they all went back into their impossible situations and kept going. That's what moms do, right? But they felt a little better, and most of us would probably agree that after a good long cry or scream, we usually feel better about whatever it is that's making us want to scream or cry in the first place. And I'm wondering a few things here. The first is, why did that scream help? So we're in a UU setting, so this could go a bunch of different ways, right? Myself, I'm a pagan and a practicing witch, and my perspective is that everything is energy. And releasing stored emotional energy from our bodies through actions like crying, screaming, movement, creating art, poetry, or music, all of these are ways that we can release and return that energy to the universe. Some of my science-minded friends would probably agree from a biological perspective. That release is an important regulating feature. It helps our bodies return to homeostasis after a disruption. We release stress hormones through our tears, and crying literally helps us feel better on a physiological level. Now, some of our spiritual friends might add in some insight about the nuances between pain and suffering. Some psych-minded friends might bring up radical acceptance, and some religious friends might believe that suffering can be a punishment for sin. Some of our prayerful friends may suggest that a scream is a prayer, and the catharsis is God or the universe answering that prayer. And that brings me right back to my initial witchy interpretation, which is that the scream or release is the manifestation or the spell that manifests catharsis. Other religions, secular and spiritual identities may offer endless other perspectives. And the more I study religion, science, human development, and spirituality, the more I come to the conclusion for myself that really it's all just the same thing in different languages. My favorite thing about our beloved faith is that we're allowed to hold space for all of those languages. There are no right answers, just a safe playground for our free and responsible spiritual exploration. Now, all those perspectives, earth-based, religious, scientific, these are all different ways that we seek answers to the big questions. Who are we? Where did we come from? Why are we here? And after the last few years especially, sometimes my biggest question, the number one thing I want to ask God, the universe, Barack Obama, whoever, like, dude, what the heck? Sometimes I think about all the outrageous things that have happened in the last 5 years, and I wonder how any of us are still upright. And there have been plenty of times when the only thing I could think to do was some sort of screaming into the abyss. Has anyone been there? Anybody ever just want to just scream? I see you, Morgan. Yes, yes. Anybody just want to be like, what the heck is this? I did not sign up for this. I did not sign up for this. One spiritual perspective that I struggle with is the idea that we did sign up for this, but that's a different sermon. So that pandemic was no joke. It was a genuinely traumatic thing that we all went through together. And it's not quite all the way over, even though the world seems to be very over it. And it seems to me like maybe we all still need a good cleansing ritual scream and to let some of that scared, overwhelmed, lonely, and frustrated energy out. So my question for the void right now is, dude, what the heck? The void and I are working on that one. What I appreciate about the void is that they're never offended by blunt questions or sweary lamentations. And my question for you is this. When we scream, when we cry or pray or write or sing our big feelings, our deepest fears, and our most vulnerable needs out into the universe, when we put that energy out into the universe, this I am hurting in some way energy, how do we expect the universe to meet us in that moment? Do we expect that our worries will be met with ambivalence, with compassion? Do we expect, I told you so, or that's what you deserve? Do we expect that our experience will be validated? Whatever response we've been conditioned to expect from the universe, what does it say about how we ourselves regard our own inherent worth and dignity? Let's unpack that one a little bit. So we as Unitarian Universalists, we don't have a set of scripture or dogma that we can point to and say, that's what we believe. Now we do have our brand new shared values from Article 2, which you can see on my t-shirt. That kind of helps, makes it a little easier to articulate. But one of our guiding principles is that we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all beings. That means a lot of things. And it means that we believe everyone's journeys and beliefs are valid. Everyone deserves to have our needs met. And there's nothing that we have to do or accomplish or prove to earn that. We exist, therefore we deserve to exist with dignity, have our needs met, and have our existence, unique perspectives, and contributions valued and validated. And that's the same for everyone, no matter if they're UUs or not. Now that's hard, right? How do you believe in the inherent worth and dignity of someone who may or may not believe that you deserve to exist? How do I hold space for the inherent worth and dignity of people who think because I was assigned female at birth, because I am queer, because I am a single mom, anything else, that I shouldn't be a pastor, that I shouldn't be in public, that I shouldn't be allowed to exist? My response to that is that my beliefs, my wholehearted, full-chest belief in the inherent worth and dignity of all beings is not about them. It is about me. It is about how I choose to show up when other people are on their worst behavior. And that's a tall order. It's exhausting. It is hard to hear someone spouting off nonsense about your community and say, they must really be hurting under that. I'm not even going to engage. That's not about me, that's about them. It's hard. And an important piece of all of this is accountability. I am entitled to my free and responsible search for truth and meaning. But the responsible part is important. It means as long as I'm not causing harm, as long as I'm not taking from cultures that don't belong to me, and as long as I remain committed to learning and growing, and as long as I'm willing to admit I don't have all the answers, and that my answers don't have to work for anybody except for me. This UU journey in faith is highly personal, and that can be complicated, and it can feel very different from what we're used to in spiritual community. This isn't usually how it's done, right? Who's ever been in another type of church where the person gets at the pulpit and says, I don't know what's going on. I don't know the answers. That doesn't happen, right? You get in front of any type of church, other type of church, and you expect the person in the pulpit to say, these are the answers, this is what you need to do, this is what you're supposed to do, and you'll get rewarded, or that's the right thing, right? Honestly, it's a little bit weird. It's a little bit radical that nobody here is going to tell you what to believe. There aren't many places like that in our society where a group of people can come together and say, we don't have to agree on everything. We're almost certainly going to disagree about some of the big things. But here's how we're going to be in community together. We're going to covenant to figure out what that means, because we don't need to think alike and believe alike to love alike. No, that's not. Have y'all ever seen that play out in the Facebook comment section? Anybody seen that play out in real life outside of a UU community, or maybe like a very intentional spiritual community? No! No, that doesn't happen. So often in our culture, we lack the connections and regulation. Wait, I skipped a paragraph. No, we're so used to being enraged. We are so used to being just PO'd, and we really, really like definitive answers. We want somebody to tell us, this is the thing that's going to fix everything. All you have to do is this. We want it to be simple, right? And it's so uncomfortable. Like, we want to know the truth. We want to know the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And it is so uncomfortable to admit that we might not know. We might never know. And it takes a lot of courage to say, maybe I don't know. But this is what I've decided to put my faith in without demanding that anyone else put their faith in that thing too. Too often in our culture, we lack the connections and regulation to handle that discomfort. Instead, we're used to trying to change others' minds, having others try to change our mind, or just surrounding ourselves with people who don't challenge us. And that creates a situation where our norm is constantly experiencing conflict and division with our fellow travelers. If not so much in our immediate circles, because we like to keep the peace at home, right? When we can, we are constantly exposed to us versus them rhetoric and divisive issues. We are told a million different ways that there are only some right ways to scream into the void. And not only do we have to defend our own ways, we have to fight off all the other people trying to convince us that their way is better. That's why I came to church, right? So that I could stop defending myself against why I wasn't everything else. Just no, I'm a UU, leave me alone. No matter how much we might want the big answers to be simple, most things in life are too complex for simple answers or solutions. And most things that matter demand a great deal of nuance. We all have different levels of capacity for that, and for some of us, it is so uncomfortable to not know, or to have our version of the truth challenged, to hold space for complexity. That desperation to have a definitive conclusion and authority on truth is an understandable trauma response to the fear of the unknown. And that need for a simple, straightforward answer is also a symptom of white supremacy culture. So it is radical, and I'd even say, God forbid, a little bit woke, to intentionally create communities where we don't have to feel threatened by our differences. Where your scream is just as valid as my scream, and when we all scream our big questions and big feelings into the void together, it creates incredible harmonies that could never exist if we all just sang the same notes. A pervasive message we receive in our culture is that when we scream into the void is going to fight back. The void, the culture, the whatever, is going to tell us to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, insist we must have done something to deserve the pain that moved us to scream. Maybe we'll learn our lesson for next time. We are conditioned by our authoritarian, punitive culture to expect the void to be a vindictive parent who will cross their arms and remind us the world is not fair, people are not good, we are not good, things are supposed to suck, We do not deserve any better, and we better stop crying about it before we give you something to cry about. That's the version of parents many of us grew up with. Anybody else grow up with parents like that? Like, I'll give you something to cry about, just don't have real feelings. And it's also the version of God that many of us grew up with. It's been suggested that this is a big reason psychologically why the former president was so popular with his particular fan base. He embodies the role of a vindictive father that they've also been taught to associate with God. But here's the thing. Our scientific friends will remind us that we are made of stardust, the very universe that surrounds us. Our earth-centered friends will remind us that we are nature, earth, air, fire, and water. Some spiritual friends will remind us that the beloved is always within us. And some religious friends will tell us that we are made in the image of God. If we are made in the image of God, a reflection of the divine, if we are the expanse of the galaxies and the power of the ocean, if we truly embody and believe in our own inherent worth and dignity, then we must conclude that we deserve unconditional love. And we must conclude that when we scream into the void, we know it is our birthright to be offered witness and comfort in return. We deserve a response to our pain that is compassionate, that validates us, that gathers our worries, hears our screams, considers it all thoughtfully, and says, wow, you've really been through it. I know you're trying your best. I'm so sorry you're hurting. We'll get through it together. We deserve to be gently parented through our pain rather than shamed for experiencing it. My goodness, what a difference it would make if that was how we as a society responded to pain. What a difference it would make if collectively we rejected the idea that we deserve to suffer. What if we choose to believe that when God or the universe speaks to and through us, it feels like a lullaby, not the sting of a switch we had to pick out ourselves. We don't have to accept a version of society or a version of God or spirituality that is based on domination, shame, and threat of punishment. We don't have to accept, well, that's the way it always is. And I don't want to imply that this is easy. I don't want to imply that all of our fellow travelers are agreeable. I had a profoundly frustrating conversation yesterday with someone I love dearly. We were talking about politics, and at one point I point blank asked him, what is more important, your money or my body? And he said with a straight face, both. They're both equally important. And that's not just the way, that we don't have to accept that's just the way it is. We don't have to be discouraged because some of our fellow travelers are not agreeable, don't see things the way we do, don't want the world to be fair, safe, and equitable for everyone. I'm not saying that loving the hell out of this broken world is something straightforward, one-dimensional, or comfortable. What I am saying, though, is it is no measure of good health to be well-adjusted to a profoundly sick society. We are not idealistic, foolish, or wrong for noticing that we live in a sick society and saying, dude, what the heck? We are not foolish for saying we all deserve better, our children deserve better. We are not accepting suffering as the status quo anymore. We demand and we will fight for the beloved community. We deserve spaces like this beloved community where our questions and questioning are revered as spiritual practices, where we can laugh and love and grieve and scream at God if we need to. And when we do scream, we deserve to be met with gentleness. We deserve to be met with kindness. We deserve to have our big feelings and big questions held in reverence, because they are a part of us and we are a part of the great love and the great mystery that is, and that great mystery can hold all of us in all of our complexity with great care. Gosh, what a difference it would make in a moment of anguish to be met with comfort and witness. What a difference that would make instead of, well, what do you expect? People suck, you're people, you deserve this, things suck. That's just the way it is. In the past, I've heard a lot of talk about false idols, and when we talk about God being anything other than the Christian God, if we're being honest, the idea of false idols, you can't, believe in the universe or whatever, it's only the one way. And I would say that a false idol, in my opinion, is anything that insists God, or the central life force, or the force, if you want to go that way, is anything other than love. I would say a false idol is any version of God that claims anything other than profound, unconditional love for every single one of us. There are dozens of loving and liberatory ways to interpret that scripture, and commitment to hateful interpretations is always accompanied by a system that prioritizes power over people. Compassion and connections are not central values of the society we live in, and I suspect at least part of that is because hurting, disconnected, disempowered people are a lot easier to control. Narratives of competition, division, revenge, inherent sinfulness, and vindictiveness are so common and entrenched, even in secular society, that we might believe that these things are human nature. But what if the big secret is that our human nature is to be a reflection of the big, big love that is, and is readily available to any of us at any time. We don't have to earn it. We don't have to do anything to receive it except lean into radically believing that we deserve it. That we and everyone around us deserves it, because we all have inherent worth and dignity, and we all deserve to live in a world where we are cherished. And I know all of that might sound like I got my master's degree in being a bleeding heart liberal snowflake, and that's fair, because I basically did. I did earn my master's degree from Starr King School for the Ministry in Religious Leadership for Social Change. And in this frustrating conversation I was having yesterday, this person kept asking me, where do you get this information? Where do you get this information? I said, it's literally my master's degree. So that's just to say, no, not all of our fellow travelers are agreeable, but that is okay. It's not about them, it's about us, it's about how we show up in the world. So what I've learned in my studies of social movements, systems of oppression, and collective liberation is that the beloved community, as the Reverend Dr. King imagined it, it is entirely possible. And that's why those currently in power are doubling down on the hate, or trying to be in power. I wrote the sermon last year. Doubling down on the hate, on the division, on refusing to acknowledge the humanity of those who are different from them. They hear their death knells ringing, and they know they will be on the wrong side of history, and they are terrified. They are terrified that losing power and status will mean that they will be treated the way they have long treated the powerless. They are terrified That when they scream into the void, all they hear back is their own hate and pain echoing at them, because that is all they think they deserve. That is all they think anyone deserves. I pray for them as often as I pray for anyone else. I pray they remember that they too are star stuff and God stuff, and they too have unconditional love at their fingertips, should they choose to embrace it. Beloveds, may we scream when we need to. May we admire the stardust in one another's auras and the oceans rolling in our veins. May we see the goddess in each of our fellow travelers, and God, beloved, love, worth, and dignity too. May we have the courage to be the ones to say no. The way we're going about this doesn't respect anyone's inherent worth, dignity, or divine nature. Let's try again. And when we get it wrong, because we will get it wrong, when we get it wrong, may we always have the courage to try again. May it be so, and blessed be.
I'm going to do this as a generosity. Yes, I don't have no idea. Thank you.